Hello, everybody. My name is McCraith, and as a strong proponent of equality, diversity, and inclusion, I'm very pleased to chair this video panel discussion, which will contribute to a citizens' assembly meeting that is focused on advancing gender equality by bringing forward proposals that seek to ensure women's full and effective participation and equal opportunities for leadership at all levels of decision making in the workplace, politics, and public life. So I'm first going to introduce each panellist to you now with a brief bio. First of all, Lian Bell. Lian works as a set designer, a cultural project manager and an artist. But she rose to national prominence in recent years through her role as campaign director of Waking the Feminists, the game-changing grassroots campaign calling for equality for women artists in Irish theatre. Secondly, Maria Joyce. Maria is the coordinator of the National Traveller Women's Forum. She is a traveller activist who has worked to achieve traveller equality and human rights. Maria presents the National Traveller Women's Forum in a number of national traveller policy committees within various government departments and has also represented the forum at national and European levels in the area of equality and human rights. And finally, our third panellist is Julie Sinnamon. Julie has been CEO of Enterprise Ireland since 2013, and prior to that she held a number of sector positions, including in Enterprise Ireland and IDA Ireland. Julie is a strong proponent of initiatives that drive diversity. She is a champion for women engaging at all levels within both the public and private sector, not as an end in itself, but because of the clear evidence of the positive impact of diversity on corporate performance. So there are three panellists, and the specific objective of this video is to provide members of the Assembly with some personal reflections based on three diverse case studies. Our three speakers have been asked to give a brief outline of their specific initiatives: Waking the Feminists, the National Traveller Women's Forum, and Enterprise Ireland's Female Entrepreneurship Strategy, and then to provide what they consider are the relevant learnings which might inform the citizens' recommendations on how to advance women's opportunities for leadership, participation in public work, and political life and decision making. So I would now like to ask each speaker in turn to speak briefly about their case study or initiative, and each speaker will speak for approximately 1 minute. And I'm going to start with Lian.
Thanks, Brian. As Brian said, Waking the Feminists was a one-year campaign for equality for women in Irish theatre. It had a really enormous impact on the Irish theatre community, both at the level of governance, with things like all of our major theatre, publicly funded theatre organisations putting policies in place, our national cultural institutions putting gender equality policies in place, research for the first time conducted on gender equality in Irish theatre, and a huge groundswell of change in amongst individuals in terms of their empowerment and feeling informed about gender equality and how it impacts them in the workplace and how that they can speak up against it. It also had a huge ripple effect outside of Irish theatre into Irish arts more in general and further out into Irish society.
Lian, thank you very much indeed. And now over to you, Maria.
The National Traveller Women's Forum is the national network of traveller women and traveller women's organisations from throughout Ireland. We recognise the particular oppression of traveller women in Irish society, working from a human rights perspective. Traveller women experience the inequality that all women experience. In addition, we deal with the inequalities that travellers experience. In many cases, it is the latter inequality which is forced to prominence as it fundamentally affects our ability to live our lives and provide for our families. Our focus today is on leadership, but I must acknowledge first, before I move on, to the huge challenges we face as women and as traveller women.
Thank you very much, Maria. I'll be back to you shortly. And finally, our third panellist, Julie Sinnamon. Over to you, Julie.
Hi. In January of this year, Enterprise Ireland launched its new 6-year strategy for women in business. And the aim of this strategy is to drive Ireland's economic success by harnessing the full talent and expertise of our diverse population. This strategy builds on significant experience we've got over the last decade in addressing the deficit of women-led startups, where we've succeeded in increasing the percentage of female-led founded high-potential startups supported by Enterprise Ireland from 7% in 2011 to 21% in 2019. And the focus now is on broadening this to the whole wider purpose of women in business, increasing the number of women in senior management and leadership positions in Irish companies. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie, as well. And so 3 very significant and critically important initiatives in Irish society. So what's important, I think, for the members of the Assembly is what happens next. I'm going to ask each of our panelists to put forward 4 or 5 learnings or recommendations arising from the experience that they would like to see come out of the Assembly to advance women in leadership roles. So I'm going to go back in the same order again, and I'm going to start with you, Lian.
Thank you. Yes, hopefully you will have received a handout that we've given a little bit more detail behind these recommendations, but we have 5 recommendations that come out of the learning that we had during the year-long campaign. First is building in accountability at the top. Accountability at government, board and executive levels is crucial, because unless there is ownership at the top, these issues of gender inequality won't be taken seriously enough and sufficient progress won't happen. Number 2 is to focus on policies, but also focus on processes, practices, and changing personal beliefs. Policies get put in place, but often aren't implemented. So it's down to simple day-to-day actions that need to change and be monitored, which is why the processes and practices are equally important in changing systemic gender inequality. Number 3 is around making sure there is equitable pay and conditions in the workplace, understanding that a gender equal society is better for everybody, that gender equality is better for boys and men and their well-being too, as well as for women, and will also significantly boost our economy. Number 4 is around making sure that we keep counting. So change happens, but we need to make sure that change is measurable. Often it's assumed that things will progress naturally and get better naturally, and that simply isn't true. Unless we count, and unless we're able to count back and forward into the future, we won't know if any of our gains are increasing or whether they're slipping backwards. So counting and publishing results keeps us honest about how progress is going, and making sure that we have ambitious targets and or quotas in place that we can aim for. Number 5, our recommendation is around the fact that gender inequality and the roles that we are given happen very early on in our lives. So we would like to recommend that there is a degendering of schools that addresses gender inequality at the earliest stages, so that teachers and educators are trained and supported in making sure that gender differences aren't placed on children at an early age, because it's damaging to both boys and girls and their sense of what is possible in their lives later on in life.
Thank you very much, Lian. That was very, very succinct and very clear. Can I now move on to Maria, please, for your learnings and recommendations?
Traveller women have made a significant contribution to the state through our participation on local and national social policy committees. We have a wealth of experience in consultation, policy development, negotiation, collaboration and compromise, sometimes in hostile environments. Traveller women have not always been treated with the respect that we should be afforded in these spaces. And given the nature of the structures, which have limited decision-making powers, we've often seen little return for our work, despite the contribution and time we've invested. Traveller women's views are rarely sought in the formulation of policy development, other than with regard to traveller-specific issues. Our participation in political and public life must go beyond this. We want to contribute to wider policy discussion and decision making in the same way that women from the majority population have important contributions to make beyond women's issues. This will require not just our access to spaces where decisions are made, but also to roles where we can have influence and help develop innovative thinking required now more than ever, and ensure implementation of policy. The benefits of more diverse and representative decision-making bodies for increasing accountability and improving outcomes for the public is now well established. However, there are particular barriers that traveller women face in becoming involved in politics, and the biggest one I have to say is racism. Racism and gender inequality work together to exclude us from the networks and resources that can pave the path to a public role. Politicians and political parties have a particular responsibility to call out racism and promote diversity, and they don't always. Inclusion in public life, including supporting traveller women as candidates for political office. Senator Eileen Flynn's nomination to the Seanad as the first ever traveller woman to take a seat in the Oireachtas was a historic and proud day for very many travellers. We have been too long waiting for this, and I hope that this will not be a once-off event, but an important step along the way for real acknowledgement of the role traveller women have played and will play in public life. We have things to say and we want to contribute. That phrase that is so often used in the wider gender debate, if you can't see it, you can't be it, is of even more relevance for young traveller women who have the vision, ambition and capability, but not the opportunities. Our daughters and granddaughters want and need to see traveller women in public life and in decision-making structures at all levels. To paraphrase Ruth Bader Ginsburg, may she rest in power, traveller women belong in all places where decisions are being made. We want to see traveller women take an active role in formal political structures in the Dáil, Seanad, Citizens' Assembly and local councils across all parties and none. We want our participation strengthened in local and national government and in community engagement structures. Not forgetting state boards that have achieved 40% participation for women, but unfortunately there's no visibility for traveller or other marginalised women. This is not going to happen just by saying it needs to happen. It will require intent, effort and resources. Targeted training, mentoring, initiatives to combat racism and measures such as designated seats in the Oireachtas have a role to play in supporting traveller women's participation in political and other state decision-making structures.
Thank you very much, Maria, for those very important messages and for the RBG reference as well. And finally, our third panellist, Julie Sinnamon.
Thank you, and there's great parallels in a lot of the recommendations and learnings that we have. Firstly, the impact of role models both in entrepreneurship and in industry in stimulating and motivating ambition and confidence is well evidenced. In addition, women are more influenced by the presence and lack of role models than their male counterparts. And the significantly unequal gender balance of role models in senior leadership positions as entrepreneurs, senior managers and CEOs remains an ongoing challenge. For this reason, we believe there's a need to place a constant focus on women role models in entrepreneurship, in management and in senior leadership positions across society. This needs to permeate across societal influences from the earliest stages, including in the educational sector as well. So the importance of putting a focus on role models is the first recommendation and finding. The second one, international research has established that increased gender balance in senior management and on boards leads to better decision making, improved productivity and increased profitability. Greater representation of women in leadership roles will also lead to sustainable and enduring change in the culture and practice of the enterprise ecosystem. So we believe there is a need to put a spotlight on the need for and promote the value of gender balance in leadership, management and boards of Irish companies. Transparency, accountability and targets all contribute to clarity of focus and translate into effective action. What gets measured gets done. For this, we believe that there's a need to have national initiatives and organisations reporting on gender balance and to include capability measures aimed at increasing participation of women at every level. So it's a matter of putting a focus on measuring and reporting on the level of female participation. And then finally, I believe government has an opportunity to take the lead in supporting and encouraging ambition for growth and employment creation by women-led businesses, as well as encouraging Irish enterprises to take steps to address gender imbalance in their leadership structures. Certainly, there are great examples in other countries of initiatives where public procurement policies include specific measures such as requirements for gender balanced senior management teams as part of the weighting in public procurement competitions. So I believe there is a need for the public procurement policies to be much more inclusive in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. And as you mentioned, so many overlaps and resonances with other contributions. I really want to thank each of our three panelists for really, really significant contributions, and the insights and learnings from your own very diverse experiences, I think, are hugely helpful. And that the fact that they converge in their recommendations, I think, is important and will inform the work of the members of the Assembly. So I want to finish up by, again, thanking our three panelists for clearly investing their time and passion for their contributions to this particular video panel session, and I think it will be hugely useful to members of the Assembly. So thank you all very much indeed, and I wish the Citizens' Assembly great success in their very important role in the months ahead. Thank you.